So
Yeah.
tonight's session is a little bit of a Marmite session, I'm afraid. You either hate what we're doing or you will love it. But hopefully, as we go through, we'll change a few minds maybe. But we'll start off with the Alexandra. Not a fly which is used that much these days, but as I was explaining to Will earlier on, I think it's more of a because the commercial patterns are not that brilliant. If I can just hold up a picture, this is a Fulling Mill catalogue, and I mean Will was very quick to point out a few errors there. It doesn't come over as being a fly you'd want to put on, but it has its uses. We'll explain later on, but we'll start off with just tying this silk on. At this point I have to put reading glasses on. So what we're going to start off with is tying in a tail, and I actually use these fluffy bits from a cock hackle, but you can use floss or whatever. Doesn't make any difference. I'm just going to tear off a few fibers, just roll them slightly and tie them in. At the end. I've got a size 12 170 on, by the way. Sorry, I should have mentioned that. But, next thing we're going to tie in is some silver oval or wire. It really doesn't make any difference. I actually prefer wire with the holographic tinsel because it doesn't sort of hide it so much. So I'm just taking some holographic tinsel and try and use as wide a tinsel as you can. And what we'll do is we'll just cut a section out, like so. The reason being is, if I just turn the other end, if you try to tie that in, like that, when we come to turn it over, it'll crimp. So the reason we put the little notch in there so it'll lay flat. So touching turns all the way up the body. The reason why we've put the oval in, and I put it down to the bottom, we want this body as smooth as possible. It's the same as when we use silk. Any sort of little bump imperfection will come out when we wind the floss or the silver tinsel to the body. So there we are, we've just finished off, and when we turn the the tinsel over, what that does is enable us to get a clean so explaining myself further, there's no black tying silk showing at the base of the tail. There's no lumps and bumps along the body. There's no gaps. We can then wind the oval around and putting 3 turns on here. That's enough. Put that away. So the hallmarks of a well-tied tinsel body is that there's no gaps showing at the base of the tail. It's a streamlined, flat body, and the ribbing is equally spaced. Now, as I said, I'm not a great fan of using oval tinsel on holographic bodies because every turn of the oval just sort of dulls the reflective aspects of the body. So I'm quite happy to use wire in this situation. So the next thing we're going to do is find a hackle. The black hen hackle here. Just going to tie it in. I'm not happy with that. That's too long. Let's take that out.
So with that, Mark, is just for chaps and myself, Mark, I've done that often. So don't be afraid to go back. If you tie in a hackle, often when I was beginning, I would carry on with it, even though it was too long.
Yeah.
So don't do that. Is my advice. Just do what Mark did there. If you think the hackle looks too long, just take it off and put in a shorter one.
I've laid everything out on the table, but as we were talking earlier on, it
blew away.
So I'm going to use a shorter hackle now. Two turns, stroke the fibers back, and just tie that in. Okay. The next thing we want to do, we want to make a decent base for the wing. So what I tend to do is just press down on the top of the hackle, and that just moves the whole of the hackle downward, like so.
Does it make it a little bit flatter there in that area to put the wing on, Mark?
Yeah, yeah. Just press the fibres down, move them out of the way. Just give yourself. Now there we go. I've pressed down so hard, I've snapped the hackle off. So okay.
That's a procedure is still that I do today that I'm not sure about. But if you do that, correct me if I'm incorrect, Mark, then the wing will sit lower.
Sit lower. That's
if you
right.
don't do it, it
Yeah.
sticks up, which you don't necessarily want.
Exactly.
A lot of the time with these flies that are wet.
So let's just tie that in again.
So again, that was the concave side facing towards the back of the fly.
Yeah.
So the curve is going back over the back of the fly with that hen hackle. You wouldn't want it the other way around. It was sticking up.
Okay. Right. Okay, we're going to tie the wing in with Peacock swordtail. And all we're going to do is to take probably about 5 or 6 feathers. We need to overdo it and just cut them so they all lie in a similar plane. And what you want again is the natural curve of the feather to lie over the twist a little bit. And hopefully it will lie in that shape. I personally prefer to have the end or the tips of the feathers just in line with the bend of the hook rather than over the back. Because what you've got to realize is when this fly is wet, it's going to just sit down a little bit tight to the body. And if it was too long, it'll flap around a bit. So I prefer just to go to the end of the bend of the hook. And we'll just snip that off. More turns there. Finish off. So I think one of the main things to remember with tying this wing is not to use too many feathers. And if you want, just chop that tail off there. It's your preference really, but that's the Alexandra.
Mark, what is that emulating?
I would say it is first and foremost a lure, a fancy pattern. people could argue that it would emulate a stickleback or a fry of some sort. I disagree with that. Trout tend not to eat sticklebacks because of their spines. They'll keep it out of the way. But,
So
one particular.
What would be a indicator that that pattern was an appropriate pattern to use?
Right, okay. If I show you a pattern which I use quite regularly, that's an Alexandra with a black tail. Now, there are certain times of the year when snails, water snails, float up to the surface, the water surface, and they flip upside down and they hang in the water with their foot on the surface of the water, and they'll float around. They call it a migration. They're just floating around. And this pattern with the black tail, or that one with the white tail, has taken me some really good fish when those trout are feeding on snails.
Thank you.
And if you hold a fish, you'll hear them rattle with the snails inside their stomach. It's very difficult to see those fish just head and tailing, and there's no fly life on the water. And if that does happen, certainly on a small lake, you can probably bet your money they're feeding on snails.
I wasn't sure, Mark, how you got the wing all in the same plane there. And when you say the same plane, were you keeping the wing like that as you cut it off in one?
Okay. Yeah, it's
like
difficult
that,
to it's
and then
difficult
it down.
To show, but I'm not sure what the best angle for this is actually. There's a natural curve to the feather.
I can see that, yeah.
Yeah. So the idea is to pinch that group of feathers off and maintain the curve.
Oh, okay. So you're squashing them laterally.
That's right. Yeah.
Oh, it's a lateral squash, a bit like the CDC feather.
Yeah.
I'm with you. Gosh, that makes a lot more sense then. Yeah, I was struggling there. I'll be tying that on the weekend, crumbs. And the original pattern, I don't think it used the fluff from the base of a cock feather. Is it goose, or what's the red tail, Mark?
Red duck or red ibis would be the original tail feather, but it was always tied quite long, as per.
Okay.
And certainly, I think either red marabou or red wool even gives a better look to the fly.
And marabou, there's marabou plumes, isn't there? There's a couple of different types of marabou. Which is the marabou that you would need?
A marabou plume is the things you would use for cat's whisker, anything like that.
And what's the one that you wouldn't do that's marabou? Is it marabou? I know there's two types and I got confused with them. Anyway, marabou plumes is the one that you want. I must.
Right. I think you're mixing up Marabou floss, maybe.
It's what wasn't Marabou floss, yeah, but lovely floss there that's been discontinued. It was like Marabou plumes and then Marabou zonka strips or Marabou tails or something like that. But I don't know. There were I went to tie a fly and someone said to me, "That's the wrong type of Marabou you've got there. You haven't got the plumes. You've got Marabou something else." But anyway, that's the one we want, Marabou plumes. And
The
I'm sure,
plumes is like the short one.
yeah, the short one.
So, as I say, the main thing when we're tying a silver tinsel body is to try and keep a relatively even body. Just going to put that on, like so. Let's try a bit of wire. Let's see if we can try and just show the difference.
And you want to keep that underneath, Mark, you were saying, the body.
With oval, I would go underneath. With wire, it's not so critical because it's not as thick. This is
Didn't know that.
This is quite a fine wire, but let's just put that out of the way. So again, if we just take the tinsel and just put a cut like so.
On that note, when Mark is tying in the tinsel there, you see he's tying in the tip of the tinsel, and I often got confused and still do today about which side you tie that tinsel in when you've got the cut in it. So if you think of a ski slope, it's always the ski slope facing down. If you can see that, if there was a skier on top of the edge of that tinsel, they'd be skiing down the slope, and it's always tied in, correct me if I'm incorrect, Mark, in that way. So the flat edge is at the back of the hook and the sloping edge is towards the forward. Bit of detail there, which I've made mistakes on many times. Yeah.
Right, I'll just rest it there and wait for everybody to get on.
So we were saying earlier, any of you still water anglers, Mark Thomas, that there was rumours that this pattern was banned on certain waters. Have you heard that, Mark Thomas?
No, I've actually never seen it before.
Yeah. So this
because it was banned.
Yeah, this is the first allegedly banned pattern that we're tying here. So watch yourself. It's not banned anymore. I think it was in Victoria times, but it was so successful.
I think it was banned in South Africa for a period as well.
Really?
Yeah.
What were the tiger fish like it? What were they?
No, the trout.
The trout, golly.
Mm.
Yeah. So the first turn of tinsel is made. When winding silver tinsel, just do touching turns. Don't sort of mask over the thing. And I'm just just realised now, if I just put in a little bit of a mistake, i.e. a little bit of a gap, you can see that there. Let's put 2 in. So if you can see that clearly, I've put a little gap in there with the black silk showing. Not sure how clear it is.
It's very clear. That's
okay. All right. Okay. So as we wind the wire around, if you go over that gap with the wire, that will hide it. The other one is too wide actually, but if I just slide it back. There,
oh, look at that.
Close that gap up. Okay, I did the first one. The second one was probably too wide, actually, but there we go. So if you do see a gap in the silver tinsel, you can hide it with a judicious turn of the wire or the oval as you're going. Yeah.
I've never seen that done before, Mark. Thank you. I could have saved myself some embarrassing situations.
Okay. Throw the hackle on now. Just going to put 2 turns. And squash the top of the hackle down. There we are. So, take the saltire fibres.
So I think you've got about 7 in there, Mark. Is that about
Yeah.
right?
May take some of these out, but let's see if that holds. There we are.
Mark, as also just when you're finishing off that fly for Mark Thomas, if you've never fished it before, we're just saying some of the latest variations of that. They put jungle cock cheeks in there, or you could put a couple of red strips of holographic up the side.
Yeah. That's right.
Tinsel, and
Yeah.
it adds a little je ne sais quoi to the whole effect.
I like to put a little bit of marabou underneath, either white or red, with a little bit of sparkle in the wing as well. I'm not sure if you can see that.
It certainly can.
Yeah.
That looks very naughty. Could we just see you varnish that as well, please, Mark? If you've got your varnish there, don't worry if you haven't.
Oh, somewhere. The easiest thing to do with a thumb under my chin, but there we go.
Thank you. And that's with the marabou tail. And that's no, that's still the cock.
Still the cock hackle.
Plume. And that's on a B170-12.
Yeah. But again, I mean, I've tried to put the end of the wing just in line with the end of the bend of the hook.
Yeah, that you can see the proportion there, which are, chaps, I put the proportions on every agenda. The proportions are key. You can see at the beginning Mark changed up a hackle there for something that would be more in proportion. And the iridescent peacock the peacock sword, it could be not only a snail but a beetle or anything that's got oxygen around it, or
yeah. I mean,
anything.
You think of the silver body being as a gaudy, bright color, but actually silver will reflect the color around it. So it may appear silver to us, but what a fish makes of silver may be completely different. If it's in water, then it's the color of the water being reflected. So as you know, we think of something being silver and flashy, may not actually be the case. It may just reflect the color of the water, which may be a green or a brown, and may actually appear quite a dull looking fly because of that.
That's really interesting. I didn't think of it like that. You're deep in thought, Paul. How are you feeling about everything? It's going to unmute.
Impressed with Mark's fly tying skills as always. Master craftsman.
Well, I mean, it's crass to say, but you know, if anybody can do it, I'm no super expert at all, but you know, it's something anybody can do.
Well, your depth of knowledge in putting these flies into, and the reason that you're using different feathers and things, and you put it all into perspective, and that takes time and experience, and you've got that.
Yeah. It's a shame I'm not a good fisherman. that would be that would be the culmination.
Well, my experience with you just proves that. So,
Yes, and with me as well.
Yeah, you're too kind, Paul. Thank you.
Remember that
You're too
trout that
kind.
you had on the last evening in Wales, Mark? That was very good. Remember you had that good trout there. I couldn't catch a cold
Oh,
that
yes.
size.
yep.